Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Amar, founder of ZenMaid and a new software
Oh
that shall
yeah.
be unnamed for now, which is the topic, of this episode. So I was telling Jeremy as we were preparing for this call and trying to come up with topics that I actually just acquired or not acquired, that I bought 50% of a project from a indie hacker who I connected with on Twitter. And so yes, I now have this little like side project that I get to work on and run the playbook on again, and we'll see if I can replicate the success that we've had with ZenMaid, or if it was a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, this is a super interesting thing. As founders, as we go through the years, there's definitely phases where we're actually looking around, and then I do remember at some point I wanted to launch like two new SaaS businesses, and it's kind of phases. I consider them as hobbies. You got your real
Yeah.
business, and then you have like sort of like hobbies going on the side. So what is the real discussion today? Is it about how do we buy a new SaaS, or is it more about different things?
I actually thought that it would be a fun one to record because I'd kind of wanted to like fill you in on my thinking and what I'm sort of planning on doing, I guess, like initially. And I'd wanted to get your thoughts on how that matched up, and that if
Okay.
you sort of landed like in the situation. So for listeners, I bought this software. It's already making a couple $100 a month, nothing crazy, but it is
More
it
than
is what I
zero.
would, yeah, it's more
It's
more than
awesome.
zero. Yeah, it's more than zero, and it's what I would consider to be validated, given that it's very niche, similar to ZenMaid, and it's essentially an indie hacker who built this and has actually found a couple of customers despite doing no sales and marketing.
He's Zen
And
Plumber.
Zen Plumber, yeah, exactly. They even stole my branding. But yeah, so that
Cool.
that was essentially what I'd wanted to
Okay.
just like, I guess, to chat with you about. Honestly, when like before we started recording, I was like, oh, actually, this is something that I wanted to just have like a one-on-one conversation, and we're just like, okay, why
Nice.
not record
Okay,
this?
I love it.
So yeah,
Okay, let me ask you a few questions that
yeah,
probably has nothing to do with the business itself to start
yeah.
with. Is that what prompted the need in you to go and explore, first of all, or maybe you didn't explore, maybe it fell on your
Yeah.
lap,
It
or
fell into my lap.
oh, it fell on your lap. So you basically saw a good opportunity and you jumped on it. That's
Yeah,
basically the idea. Okay, cool. Now,
exactly.
what made you think that you have the bandwidth for it? Because you know that starting a business from scratch is pretty intense and involved.
Yeah, so it already seems like there's good product market fit on this. So it seems like it's already in a place where we don't have to actually sprint everything. And from talking with the other, with I guess the I don't know if it's co-founder. We haven't really agreed like on titles, but essentially with the guy who initially like built it, that we're both planning on working on it part-time, and it just seemed like it was a good fit in terms of the amount of work that we could both contribute to it, kind of our expectations around it. He knows that it's going to be very much part-time like for me, and then he's looking for other projects and to be essentially taking on like client work, right? So it just seemed like a very good fit in a lot of ways. But then the other thing is that because he's already built the product and already has, I think, somewhere like low double figures in customers and stuff, essentially I feel like I've bought in considerably ahead. That going from 0 to 1 to
Yeah,
me is
it's the
like the
hard
part that
part.
I just dread that. And so being able to buy into something at a really good like valuation, right? Like it was a great like buy for me. Jeremy, you obviously know like the price and the revenue numbers. I don't want to share those yet until speaking like with my partner or whatever. But essentially, it felt like a no-brainer looking at the opportunity, and then of course looking at the skill set that I could like bring to the table, right? So
Okay.
definitely wasn't something that I was out there looking for.
But do you have the bandwidth for it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, it's like what you were saying that to me it'll just be something that'll kind of be like entertaining.
Yeah, the
I
hobby on
went
the
through
side. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, literally, like when I talked to my wife about this, I was like, look, like, it's a small enough amount of money that
yeah.
like I'll essentially take this out of my like hobby or like play money. Like
Got
I'm
it.
happy to replace this in the investment accounts and we don't even have to think of this as an
Yeah.
investment. Like it's that low of a price that I will just buy this like for fun.
Honey, I'm
And
sorry, I'm gonna have to cancel all the dinners for the next 3 years.
yeah, exactly. No more vacations. No more vacations. Um, so yeah, so in that sense, it was very much like a no brainer. And then also, like I said, from talking to the guy that I bought into with, um, it also just seemed like it was a very good match in terms of like workload expectations. That having bought in, I don't feel like I need to be working 20 or 40 hours like a week on this. If I work five
Yeah,
or
for
10
sure.
hours, as long as I'm doing what's important, right? Which is a couple of the marketing things that I've already identified from having done them like at ZenMaid. I know that I can move the needle here.
Yeah, well, speaking of moving the needle, by the way, is one of
Mm-hmm.
the thing that, you know, I have I looked at different projects, of course, as well. And there is always if I put 1% of effort into this thing, right? How much does it actually move the needles? And it's always, I always come back to just basically quick mail because the more effort I put, because there is more revenue and so on. So 1% in quick mail makes a massive, amounts of money, where 1% in a new venture is like, yeah, 10 more dollars, like it's more like the leverage of our efforts, on the
Mm-hmm.
business. And so I think that's very healthy to do it as a sort of like hobby on the side until effectively, something happens.
Yeah.
But I think that it could be very disheartening, just, why do I spend time on this thing where, the same amount of time will yield so much more yield on something else.
So I don't feel that way with ZenMaid. So there's a couple things there. So I think that leverage comes from building like the machine, right? That you have leverage with QuickMail because you've put in the work, you've built all
Sure.
of these systems and stuff. And so with this, it's just kind of going back to like to the initial building blocks of like ZenMaid, but applying it to a new company and just trying to build up like another growth engine similar to ZenMaid. But the big difference there is that with ZenMaid, I recently hired the last kind of person to fill out my executive team. So
Oh,
now
yeah,
in
yeah,
every
yeah.
department, right, I have like
That's really
leaders,
good.
and so now I don't actually feel like me putting in more time or putting in more mental energy actually has that big of an impact on the business anymore. That like I have very kind of like set times. It's mainly Mondays and Tuesdays that I have calls where like it's my leadership role in the team. It's making sure we're all pulling in the same direction. But outside of that, the vast majority of things that I can spend my time doing
Got it.
working in the business, it's better having someone else do that better than me and more consistently than me just showing up randomly, sporadically to do like one marketing
Sure.
campaign.
So
And
here's
so,
here's a
yeah.
question for you. So you're at the level, right? You're at the level of working on the business with ZenMaid, which means you look
Mhm.
at the business and so on. Are you
Yeah.
planning to work on the business or in the business for the new venture?
For the new venture, it's going to be a little bit of both. I will work in the business for some of the things that I really enjoy and that I think it's important for like the founder to do. So a lot of like the initial copywriting and initial email sequences and
Got
stuff
it.
I'll be doing, which is more getting into the customer's head. But I'm already setting aside part of the money that I pay myself like from ZenMaid to essentially have like an assistant to do some of the more repetitive work and all of that stuff. But then the other thing is that I will be placing a very big focus on building systems that can essentially be automated very, very like quickly and wouldn't require ongoing work. So I don't know that I'll be doing sales calls or like giving demos after I've given maybe, let's say, like 50, right? Like I need to give enough that I understand the market like quite well, but at some point I'm going to automate that, and I'm going to automate that a lot faster than I did at ZenMaid.
Okay.
So yeah.
I presume your co-founder is technical.
Yes.
Okay. There is always that chance that, if the company sort of fails, you can actually get him a job in ZenMaid. Is the technology similar?
I think it's similar enough. I mean, that's actually how we connected. Is we connected because I'd put out on Twitter, if you're like an indie hacker that's looking for part-time work, get in touch. And I was just kind of wanted to see what was out there. I had a really great conversation with this guy, and I was going to introduce him to Alex, like at ZenMaiden and everything. And then I kind of like, we were just like talking, and he's like, oh
Hold
yeah,
on a
by the
second.
way.
Yes, like, hold on a second. You're making money?
Yeah, right. Yeah, he essentially was like, oh yeah, like I've got this like this side project, so I was like, oh, how's that going? And he's like, oh well, it's frustrating because like I just have people that come in and out every month, so it pretty much just stays like the same amount. And I'm like, well, how much? And then it kind of went from there. And I was like, hang on, like you're actually on to something here. You've just never bothered to do any sales and marketing, and you're complaining that you're not growing. So he was well
Classic.
aware of that though. Yeah, exactly.
But
So
still, he
then,
went more than zero, which is already like a massive, massive
exactly.
thing.
And that's what I was telling him. Is I'm like, dude, like you actually are onto something here. Like you've actually created something of value. Like he initially thought I was kidding when I said, if you're thinking of shutting this down, like I'll just send you money for it. Just like no questions asked. I will just send you money for this because like I see the value in it. And he was like, wait, like if you see the value in it, then like maybe there is value. And I'm like, that's what I'm trying to tell you here. I was essentially having to convince him, of like the price that I eventually bought 50% for. Like I essentially sold him on that.
So is that actually official in terms of shares, distribution, and stuff like that, or is it still, ongoing?
We essentially just agreed to like a 50% like equity split, but because of like the countries that we're in and stuff, it's more of like a personal trust thing, right? It's the kind of thing that the amount of
It's just,
paperwork that we'd
yeah.
have to do, and like all that stuff. So yeah, so we have like a written contract that would hold up in a court of law saying that I now own 50% as soon as I send him the money. I haven't paid him yet, but we just signed the contract yesterday.
This is an interesting one. A lot of people are doing 50-50 non-vesting kind of thing, and I don't know many that actually goes well doing 50-50. Why 50-50? Why not 51-49 or some other number?
I don't really know. I mean, I think I'd initially said like 51, like 49. And then like, I think at some point I just realized that it was important that we be like equal partners here. And that like, honestly, the way that everything is set up, it doesn't really matter if I have 51 like percent, like it doesn't actually make like that big of a difference. Like, I don't know if that's going to be one that I'm going to regret, but I think that he's someone that I will want to work with like in the future. And so I felt that it was more important, even like symbolically, like to have that. I mean, it worked for me at ZenMaid. Like, like that's like one big thing is that Arun and I, our entire relationship was built on trust and us agreeing on like the various like, different directions that we took and like and all of that stuff. So
I think that's an area where we probably disagree because there is
not
very
something
little.
that I recommend. It's not something
Yeah, exactly. There is very little chance,
but I just don't recommend it.
The two equal partner will put equal work. It's just never happens.
Well, but the problem with that is that if you'd gone like through that, Arun would have taken way more of the equity. And the truth is that we've both contributed various ways over time, and the whole thing was that we were both like we're going to like to win this together. And the first like 2 or 3 years Arun did way more work than me, and then obviously I've done way more.
That's
work
why you
since.
got vesting. Like every year that should be renegotiated, honestly, based on how much effort one put in the company. But that could be like a different topic, honestly. But that could be an interesting thing to explore. I just would recommend the listeners not to go for 50-50 as a general rule.
Yeah, I would say that's a general rule as well. I would say there's always exceptions, and I clearly tend to make those, but I wouldn't recommend it. Well, I mean, it works for me. Like it has worked for me, and I trust myself with it, but I would not recommend that generally. So I agree with you.
And the other thing I would say is if you go 50-50, always have a document that resolves conflicts. Because when you are like equal, then there's no resolution of conflict, and that could be going pretty bad. I know personally a few people, and one where it went super bad, fighting courts and stuff like that. And it's just messy overall. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we talk about that. Do you have any plan for growth already, or it's just more like let's toy with it, let's look at where we are at, and then after that let's look at direction of product, or or team maybe building? Maybe way too early to talk about team, but are you guys going to think about maybe raising some capitals or
I don't think that we're thinking
bootstrap?
about raising capital or like building a team anytime like soon. That it seems like we can pretty much do the work like between the two of us to get it up like pretty like nicely. It's definitely one of those things that I think I'll want to see considerably more validation from it and more revenue from it before I would want to start building out the team in comparison like to ZenMaid, just because, you know, in terms of that, like we're not sure kind of which direction we're going to take it. And so that's one of the things that I wrote to him about is essentially the different revenue levels at which point we'll reevaluate. And I think there's a buyout clause so that if at some point, you know, it's probably more for him that if at some point he wants to step away, then it's like, okay,
That's
like
a
I'll
really
buy
cool
your
one.
shares, right? And so, but yeah, I have a lot of very good ideas. I mean, the nice thing is that like if we're being completely honest, he's pretty much done nothing with it, right? That like in terms of sales and marketing, there's so many things that I can do. So the first thing is
That's
just
why you
getting a
come
couple
in.
email sequences. Yeah, exactly. And that's why he wanted me like, you know, on board with this, because he realizes that, and then, you know, he sees the things to do but doesn't really know how to execute on them, right? So like I don't think there's really any email sequences at all, right? So he has people that on the homepage, they enter in their email address and then it takes them to the sign up page. So he has something like 500 people who have filled out that first step, but then didn't become trial users or customers, and he's never sent them a single email, right? So
Yeah,
like, you
so
know,
it's
yeah.
101 marketing stuff that are missing.
Exactly. And so, yeah, and so that's essentially what I'm looking at doing, writing some of those, you know, giving a couple of demos. He's already this is another thing that I've like looked at is he's already doing pretty well on the SEO front, despite the fact that he spent no time on SEO. Right. So I've got a bunch of terms that he's already on the second or third page. I think in some cases the fourth page of Google on, but he gets traffic from every month. And then we're going to go through and create dedicated pages. And so, yeah, I've got a lot of things kind of in the playbook that I think we can put in place that will immediately bump the results. And then after I do the initial sprint of all like the low hanging fruit, then I'll have to go back to the drawing board and kind of see what's next and what kind of fits what I actually want to work on and all
Yeah,
of
you
that
want to
stuff.
apply a certain playbook. I can see that.
Yeah.
Question for you is, do you
Yeah.
actually, and that may be like a deep question, do you actually want to do it for making more money or to validate your skills as to, I can do it again?
I mean,
Like
both, I
internally.
think. So it definitely has less to do with the money. It definitely has less to do with the money because, like you said, ZenMaid makes plenty of money. It's not likely that this is going to turn into something that's actually going to have any significant like impact on like my personal take home income. I mean, for at least a couple of years, if not like ever, right? And I have absolutely no problems with that. But yeah, I thought that it was a unique like opportunity. It's definitely about yeah, kind of refining the skill set that I've built up like with ZenMaid. Like I said, I think that this person is a great person to be working with, and he's someone that I could see working with like in the future. And so yeah, I mean, essentially when I looked at it for the price and the amount of money that they were making, and I essentially weighed the pros and the cons, there were almost no cons to really taking this. It's like, yeah, could it distract me from ZenMaid? Yes, but that
Yes,
would
of
be
course.
entirely
But
my
like,
fault, right? Like that's something that I can fix, right? So all the
right.
things of it's like, you know, the worst case is it goes to zero and, you know, I lose a little bit of money, you know, like essentially when I looked at the cons, it was a no brainer. But yeah, I don't know how far we would push it in terms of turning it into like a real company and hiring like a team and like and all of that stuff. Like
But if you
we'll have to
didn't
see.
take it like, for the money, then talking about like money as a cons or whatever doesn't actually mean anything. So what is it like? Was it really to sort of,
No. Like just because I say that it's not about the money doesn't mean that money doesn't matter like at all and didn't play any factor
no,
in it like
but
whatsoever.
in the factor that you're mentioning about
Yeah.
money, but I'm not interested in hearing about money as a factor. Like I'm
Mhm.
more interested in is like, Was that to validate your own personal skill? Like, I'm still in the game, I can still do it, which a lot of, founder wants to do at some point. Like they have their picking glasses and say, I can do it again, kind of thing. Or is it like
I
more
would.
to experiment? Or is it like, what is
It's a
the angle?
it's a combination of all the
All right, right.
things.
It's a
It's
bit of
not like
everything. Huh?
it's a bit of everything, right? Like
Got
it's
it.
not like just one thing. It's a wide variety of things. Like I
That's
think
fine.
that I'll
There was
learn a
no
lot from
one
it.
primary driver. It was just like
Yeah,
a little bit
exactly.
of everything and looking. It's like, oh man, this is a good opportunity. Let's try it.
At the very least, I think that it'll be a great experience, and
Yeah.
I think it would say something if I'm able to replicate ZenMade's success with this. But even if I don't, like essentially, yeah, I think I'm going to learn from the experience, and so yeah, I mean, I think that that's really what it comes down to.
In the past, you already had those ideas of like buying stuff and so on.
Mhm.
What would you recommend, other, founders, like when do you think this is a distraction and when do you think they should actually, either carry on their own on business or actually, start looking into, maybe buying and toying with other businesses?
Mm, I think it's going to be such like a personal question, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think that you've got to have like your main business at like a certain point that like that you're comfortable with. And comfortable with could mean financially, it could mean the time that you put
Yep.
in. There's like a variety of things that like that it could mean, right? So for me, I'm very specifically at the point with ZenMade where not only am I comfortable with like the amount of money that I take home, I'm comfortable with the amount of time that I put in, and more. I
Yeah.
think most importantly for me, because of the standards that like that I've set for ZenMade, is most importantly for me is I'm comfortable with the team that I have in place to continue building the business with less input from me. And I was never willing to step away from ZenMade before I felt like the company was going to grow in my absence. And so now it's like I'm not even fully like stepping away. This isn't actually going to change like the time that I put into ZenMade because I've already come down to part-time hours. Um, and so for me, it's I'd wanted to get to this point before I would seriously consider something like this.
That's a great thing. And usually just, for people listening, that's 4 or 5 years a minimum. I would say if you're
Yeah.
bootstrap and starting from scratch, because it does take time to build a business and then put some executive team in place. I'm not even there yet, honestly, but I only
Yeah.
really started working on the business 2 years ago. Yeah, so
yeah. Well, one thing to keep in mind, I mean, for listeners, is I bought another software
true.
product last year, like 14, 15 months ago,
Yeah, what
and
happened with that, by
essentially
the way?
I never did anything with it because like I didn't have the technical partner to actually make some of the changes that I wanted. It wasn't quite ready to sell. It was like close, but it was, it still needed like quite a bit of work. And a lot of that work required a lot of management, right? Whereas like with this one that I've like bought into now, if he doesn't touch the product, it's gonna make like our lives like a bit harder, but the product works. He's willing to keep working on it, or to at least keep it alive so that I can
Mhm.
sell and market it. And with the one that I bought last year, we essentially had to do the 0 to 1 work, even though we'd already done a
Uh,
lot of it. And so the whole thing was that at that point, ZenMade was kind of plateauing. It was a bit more of a distraction. ZenMade began growing again, and I was like, okay, like I really like need to focus on ZenMade and get us back to like a healthy like revenue. This is a big distraction, right?
got it.
Whereas now I thought about it, and even if ZenMade started getting more busy and we started jumping up in revenue again, that wouldn't increase my time. That wouldn't make me personally any more busy. I would still want to spend at least some of my time working on this side project, and
What
that
would
was how I knew it
happen?
was right.
What would happen in your mind if suddenly, Zenmei is starting crashing or like, going down, 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 months after months? Would that means you'll have to sort of like step back in and then do things more? Or...
It would completely depend on why. It would
Yeah,
completely depend on why, because most of my time is just spent thinking these days. So if we were crashing, my time would be spent thinking about why that's happening,
yeah,
what we can do differently, but the team would still be implementing everything. It's only if I had to start letting people go that I would have to step back in,
okay, very
right?
important. It's a
Yeah.
great remark.
Mhm.
Okay, what do you think we didn't explore yet on that little, venture?
Um,
One thing,
well, I guess just
sorry,
like
yeah, go ahead.
hypothetically,
Yeah,
if it was you, what would you be doing in my shoes? If you had
Oh, that's a
just
good
bought
one. Let's
into a
let's do this
company, yeah,
exercise. I think
yeah,
there'd be a difference into what we're trying to do. And
okay,
I,
cool.
so here's the thing. Why would I would need to know why I'm buying it? Because if I'm buying it to try things, I would probably try to raise money and do VC roads, which is like, well, obviously not VC because
Yeah,
that will
I know what you
require
mean.
exchange of 1 billion and some, but I will try to find people who are willing to invest in it. The funny thing for it is just because I never done it, and that could be like something new for me to explore with really no risk type of thing. It will open doors. We could talk, and you never know. QuickMail could also
Yeah.
sort of like benefit from it in the future. So that's the sort of things I will look at, like experiments on the site where no fear of crashing. One thing as well is I reinvest every profit into it. I think I'll be doing like more reckless action that I wouldn't take with QuickMail because it's
Makes
too
sense.
risky and there is too. So that's the sort of thing that I would probably do. Now, in terms of if I wanted to build like a proper new sort of company, like a solid type of company, I would probably just reapply exactly what I'm good at. So in your case, this is definitely marketing. I think it makes like perfect sense. It's almost like boring in a sense, because it's just like, it works, and then you just reapplying your playbook, and you know what's going to work, and hopefully just carry on this way. If I was so in that case, what I would probably work on is infrastructure and the product myself, but it will feel like I don't think that's what I want to do. So I wouldn't buy a product to work on the infrastructure and code of it. I think that'd be a big mistake for me. For you, it totally makes sense. Because when they are small thing, this is marketing that is needed, at this stage.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely is like a perfect, like kind of,
I know what I'll do.
Set fit. Yeah,
I'll buy it and I hire you.
There we go. There we go. That makes sense. That makes sense.
I don't think it's more like we'll have to switch roles. We'll have to like say there's a product, it's really great, but the product sucks. I don't think I will jump into it. I don't think I would build another product. Like, I'm not a developer anymore. I don't feel like it. I have the skills, like for sure. I can build stuff. I probably
for you, I would think that you would want to buy a company that was already making like 100K or maybe like 250K like a year, where you're like, okay, like I see the potential, like the product is good, but the product could be better with my leadership, right? And I feel like
exactly. Oh yeah, 100%. Oh yeah, 100. You know what will be awesome for me actually to do, like to use my skills, is to buy a company that is already making a lot of revenue, but they're not profitable because they got a lot of fat and they need trimming. Only coming and fix this shit.
Exactly.
Like I'm change management. This is what my skills are.
Okay, so what we're gonna do then is I'm gonna buy them really low, and then I'm gonna build them up to that point. I'm gonna hire them. I'm gonna have a great team culture, and then I'll sell them to you, and you come in.
And then I'll write it off. Yes. Awesome. Exactly what it needs. You stay, you're fired. You stay, you're fired. Okay, let's run with it now. But honestly, this is where I'm good at, is like thinking, optimization of things, whether it's in code or it's on companies, right? This is so that would be my skill set, yes.
And honestly, that's something which is funny actually, because what we were talking about last time of the wartime and peacetime CEO, that would make you a peacetime CEO. That would make you peacetime, but I don't think you are. So that's quite interesting.
On this.
Yeah, but that's quite interesting. Crap, I had something. So one thing I was going to say is, so we're going to run a summit that we're going to take the exact same playbook that we used for the Made Summit, and we're going to run a summit for this company. And my team member who manages the summit for me at ZenMade, I told her that I was acquiring this, and she's like, that is awesome. Like, we should totally do this. Now, of course, we don't have the money like to pay her, because we paid her like quite a bit of money to run the summit for ZenMade.
Well, you guys get equity or whatever.
Well, but she made us like $25,000 on the Made Summit. And so what I'm thinking that we go, hey, like we'll split it. Exactly. Really, it's like, we don't have an audience, so you're probably not going to be able to make us more than like 5 or 10K, but we'll give you 50% of every dollar that comes comes in, but then she executes it like for free, right? And that could actually
So
give her
funny,
huge upside, but it's low
you're
risk.
pushing your own.
Yeah.
your own
Well, it's a part-time.
employees.
It's a part-time thing because she's an important team member at ZenMaid, so she's definitely not coming over to this, but she's
this
like
is
she's
also
excited
the other
about it.
thing that I will look at
Yeah.
is obviously definitely synergy, right? So if I'm buying a team or if I'm buying a product, I'm also on my back of my head, like also buying the team, like what synergy
Yeah.
could we get? Like what, you know, like exactly if we have like someone running Summit, can you run both summits? You know, those sort of synergy is the thing that will really quick. So for me, it wouldn't be like, I wouldn't buy something for golf cart or, you know, it's like something completely random that is completely disconnected. Something I can see myself buying potentially in the future is something like, you know, Hunter.io or, you know, the tools that actually provide stuff that will then be useful for quick mail.
Yeah,
right?
strategic acquisitions.
Exactly. Strategic acquisition, I can see that's happening.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say. I think it's really important that that we like identify, and I think you and I are getting a better feel for that over time as we build bigger and bigger companies, about what kind of phase of the companies kind of play to our strengths, right?
100%.
That like for me, I don't think that I would want to come in and buy a company that already had a team if I was going to have to come in and like lead that team, right? Like unless I was hiring the team and the leader to come in and to keep running things the way that it was, which is obviously a really high level acquisition. Otherwise, I'd like to buy in at like a quite low level. But what I realized from last year's acquisition was that the 0 to 1 phase is horrible for me because I'm not a builder. Right. So now I found that phase right there. And so for you, I actually think that for you, it's probably start from scratch, build exactly what you want and go out there and create what you want in the world. Or it's probably look for a company that's already making like $250,000 a year and has a bloated team. And so you knowing that like, okay, these are kind of the two opportunities that I might potentially be open to. I feel like that'll be really helpful because when this fell into my lap, I was like, this is for me. This is the perfect situation for me. And I knew it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, you nailed me so right, because effectively I can see both. Like I can see the 0 to 1, like, hey, let me just build a product as I'm talking to customers and trying to make sure, you know, they bring money and then we nail it.
You enjoy it.
I enjoy that. This is a phase I tremendously enjoy. I don't enjoy the 30K, 50K stuff where it's like it's just boring. It's just like about like, you know, putting more things in place, system in place and so on. But I do enjoy also optimization of, you know, like what you said, like, you know, 100K more and stuff like that. So I think, you're absolutely right. There is a phase I don't like, and it's good that we are getting out of this with quick mail. So it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. I think that's a really good episode. I'm glad we recorded this because that was what's funny is it took us a while to get to really what I'd wanted to ask, which was essentially like, Jeremy, what would you do if you had just bought this company, right? And so
I resell it to Amal for double the price.
I'd probably take it. I'd probably take you up on it. I'd be like, Jeremy, like this is a great opportunity.
Quick buck, like turning flipping companies. Yeah. All right. So if you're making, you know, a few dollars, you know, you move from 0 to 1, just contact me. I'll buy it and sell it back to Amal. That's awesome. All right. Cool. Thanks. What else do we want to mention? Like
tweeted
something?
Us. Yeah, tweeted us. It's just Amar and Jay Chatelain. I always want to say it with an N. Before the T, I always want to say.
I don't get offended. Honestly, I couldn't give more of a crap. I've been called like so many different, even with Jeremy, like Jeremy, you know, whatever, like lots of different. It's like, I don't care. It's fine. Some people take offense. I don't.
Yeah. So okay, cool.
All right.
See you on the next one.
Thanks, Amal.